For those that have never been to a meeting before, the way things work here is once we're done with our roll call, we go over, city staff goes over an item. Once they're done giving their presentation, we open it up just to the commission for technical questions. Once we're done with our technical questions, we close our discussion and open up to the public. If you have a comment or a question about any item, please step up to the microphone and state your name and address so we have it for the minutes. And please keep your comments as close to the topic as possible. And also know that we may ask you a question or two if you have something to say. Once the public, everybody who wants to speak on an issue has done so, we close public commentary and come back to the commission for discussion and a vote. I would also ask that if you have cell phones, please turn them off or to vibrate so that they don't interrupt or bother the meeting. With that, let's call the roll.
David Borsak, Ed Bowen, Jeffrey Tones.
Here.
Thomas Wojtek.
Here.
John Hintz. Steve Cummings. Kathleen Propp.
Here.
Donna Laurie. Robert Weigert.
Here.
Carl Nollenberger.
Here.
All right, we have the minutes from the 15th of April. Do we have any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes have been approved. Let's move on to item number 1, Hickory 6 annexation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thurman and Valita Rogers are requesting the approval of the Hickory 6 annexation of approximately 0.12 acres of land located at 2338 Hickory Lane in the town of Oshkosh. The property is currently developed with a single-family dwelling and detached garage, and currently has a Winnebago County zoning designation of R2 suburban residential district. The petitioners are requesting the property be annexed with a R1 single-family residence district, which would match the surrounding zoning surrounding the property and is comparable with the county's R2 zoning designation. And the purpose of the annexation is for the property owner to obtain city sanitary sewer and water to allow the owners to proceed with some extensive remodeling and construct an addition to the existing home. The county has restrictions on the amount of alterations that can occur on existing structures based on the on-site sewage system capacity and availability of municipal cities or sewer and water. The comprehensive plan designates this area as appropriate for residential use, and the proposed zoning permits the proposed single-family use for the property. The Department of Public Works reviewed the request and reported that the city's sanitary sewer and water were constructed in front of the property back in 2000 and has laterals stuck to the property line. The Oshkosh Fire and Police Departments reviewed the request and don't have any concerns with servicing this property. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the Hickory 6 annexation with a temporary and permanent zoning of R1 single-family residence district as requested.
All right, thank you. Technical questions from the commission. Kathy?
The adjacent properties on either side are in the city.
Correct, yes.
Other technical questions? Jeff?
And the connection to the sewer system is the property owner's responsibility, correct?
Correct.
So there's no cost to the city since there's the laterals and everything are already stubbed there?
There's probably, there are some outstanding connection charges which are going to be required to be paid prior to pulling any plumbing permits. So, and that was back
By the property owner?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Any other technical questions? Okay, that's enough of that. Anybody here from the public to speak to this item today? Going once, twice. Okay, public commentary is closed. Back to the commission. Carl.
Move approval. Second.
Been moved by Carl, seconded by Ed. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Tones.
Aye.
Propp.
Aye.
Weigert.
Aye.
Nollenberger.
Aye.
Bowen.
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Moving on to item 2, land disposition of a property located adjacent to 3555 Mosers.
Thank you. The city is requesting the disposition of a property containing a railroad spur located north and adjacent to Packer LLC at 3555 Moser Street. Up on the screen, it's kind of hard to see. The subject site is a 15-foot by 606-foot, approximately 9,090 square feet strip of land which currently contains a rail line spur, which is servicing Packer LLC to the south. The request was brought to the city by Packer as they do have future plans to expand to the north, and the strip of land is acting as an impediment as the property to the south has no direct physical connection to the property to the north. The subject site is located in the city's North Industrial Park, as is Packer to the south, and the city-town line is actually right here, and Packer will be requesting annexation of the property to the north sometime in the future. This rail line spur and land or associated land serves no practical purpose to the city and sees no issues with disposing this land to Packer, and staff is recommending approval of the land disposition as requested.
All right. Technical questions from the commission. Jeff?
I'm assuming the city owns the land. Who owns the rail spur?
You know who actually owns the...
Alan might have that information.
Because if we don't own that railroad spur and the railroad owns it, then what's the purpose, and they can't vacate it, then what's the purpose of donating this land, because they still wouldn't have access to that property?
I'm going to have to defer to Community Development Director Davis on
To my
that.
knowledge, the city owns that property, and the city installed the railroad spur in conjunction with Packer. So it's not a railroad spur, if that's what you think. It's either the cities or Packers or both.
That's what I'm asking,
Right.
is who owns the rights to this? If it's the railroad, then still got an issue.
Not that I've ever heard.
I think what we're doing is we're moving forward right now based on the assumption that the city owns it. Now, the title search will further clarify that issue, but we're going forward with the assumption that it's ours. Naturally, that's going to come up at some point, you know, as we...
Will that come up prior to the council acting on that?
Yeah.
Will we have that now, Tim? Okay.
Any other technical questions? Go ahead, Ed.
And is this a disposal because it's an adjacent property that we're just deeding on a quitclaim, or is this an acquisition? Is there I mean, how is this?
For the Community Development Director.
How is this working, I guess? I'm just curious because that sort of tells us what we need to know about what this is.
It's a separate parcel that the city owns
Right.
with a tax ID number, so that's why we're disposing of the property rather than vacating something.
Okay.
And the disposition would have to go through council, and the quitclaim deed will be prepared by the city attorney's office.
Okay.
Back to Jeff.
There's no easement requirements here? I mean, I noticed we didn't put any conditions that, is there any utility right-of-ways or anything like that we have to be concerned about on this piece of property?
The only utilities are under Moser, so no, there are no utilities.
And if it's a private utility
And Packer.
or private easement, that
Yeah,
remains
it's
in
different.
place.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking about, public easement that we'd have to consider.
Any other technical questions? Okay, seeing none. Anybody here from the public to speak to this item? Nobody's jumping up and down at that. All right, close public commentary, back to the commission.
Motion to approve. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on? Go ahead, Jeff.
Generally, I'm going to be in favor of this, but I just want to condition that as long as we do check the ownership of the railroad spur to make sure we're not doing anything that would cause some problems for the common council when they consider it.
Any other comments on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Toms?
Aye.
Crop?
Aye?
Weigert?
Aye.
Nolenberger?
Aye.
Bowen?
Aye.
Whitehead?
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Move on to item number 3, conditional use permit request to establish an automobile service business and towing operation at 1980 West Furno Avenue.
Great, thank you. As stated, the petitioner is requesting the conditional use permit to establish an automobile service and towing business within the site. As we look at the site itself, currently it's a 0.64 acres in size, and the building itself is a fairly small building, constituting only 7% of the actual lot. The driving surfaces, which is an existing gravel driveway and gravel or concrete in the rear, and then there's also gravel throughout the site itself, constitutes 25%, and it's combination of concrete and gravel. And then the open space itself totals to 68%. As we're looking around the site itself, there's an existing 6-foot perimeter fence with 2 gates, one small walking gate and then one larger driving gate with both having doors. And then there is substantial green space outside of the fenced-in area to the west and the southwest corner. When we get closer to the structure itself, it's a 1,900 square foot or 1,912 square foot structure, of which 600 square feet is the front office area and waiting area and bathroom facilities, while the remaining footage is the garage and shop space itself. So with this, as we get closer to, and here's just some images to show you what the existing lot looks like. It does have a fence, again, that's 6 foot in size, that is in need of repair, and the petitioner himself has agreed to do that, and it is one of the conditions as we listed later on. And another image of the site from Furno. So getting to the existing land use, currently right now it is zoned M3 General Industrial, and it being a vacant parcel, but was previously used within the commercial capacity. And that is consistent with the 10 and 20-year land use plans. And looking at some of the surrounding uses, we have a storage facility to the north with the City of Oshkosh M3 designation, and to the east we have the concrete plant, which is also M3. Now it gets a little tricky here as we look around because it's that we have the town of Oshkosh parcels and the City of Oshkosh parcels, but as we continue to the south we have the town of Oshkosh, which is an M2 general industrial designation, and then further to the south of that we get back into the City of Oshkosh, which is back into the M3 designation, and it does have some county designations over that. And then continuing to the west we have the vacant commercial lot. Getting back to the site itself, the proposed business characteristics, I just wanted to touch upon them a little bit since it is a conditional use. The plan is, as stated, was a vehicle service and repair shop, which also provides 24-hour towing. The towing itself, the petitioner has stated that he will be turning off the lights as he gets to the site in respect to the other surrounding area. Now, this is a pretty heavily commercial and industrial area, so that we don't see any major impacts when it comes to the lighting from the tow truck flashers, but he did want to make that clear that he would be doing that. In addition, as we look at this next slide, it's fairly faint, but as you can see, we'll have some outside storage, all within the fenced-in area. And again, the fenced-in area will be repaired with consistent materials. And then we'll have some storage facilities in the back here for his existing tow trucks, as well as the shop area. And you can see the smaller waiting area. The customer parking area will be in the front of the building itself. That would be off the Furno Ave entrance, which is the only entrance on and off the site. And no overnight parking or storage of any vehicles, equipment, materials, or anything will be outside of the property, fenced-in property itself. Everything will be contained within the property. The only outside parking would be the customer area. So there could be some on-site drop-off times like that, but no outside storage of any sort of service materials or machinery. So as stated, staff is in support of the proposed use and the structure because it is similar in size and scale to what the previous use was. The previous use was an existing tow truck and service facility, so it is consistent with that use. And we did have the opportunity to discuss some of these site concerns with the petitioner, and he has agreed to the proposed conditions. And we do have 4 conditions that I've stated. The first one is no outdoor unenclosed storage of any of the tow trucks, service equipment, inoperable vehicles, parts, or materials to be allowed outside of the fenced-in area. The second condition was that the fence enclosure itself has to be repaired with complementary and similar materials. Third one is itself, as we start to look down the side here, and I can go back to our aerial, or our image right here, Algoma is one of those corridors that come into the city itself. So we want to promote that healthy looking, the greenscape, the beautification of some of those major corridors coming in. So we have wrote one of the conditions that landscaping to be installed along the Algoma Boulevard frontage, which does also include the footage to the southwest corner. It'd be the south side of the property, about 30 feet. It would then line up to the existing driveway, and it would just provide a little bit of a landscaping barrier. And we are requiring that plans be submitted to planning staff review before the acceptance of the permits and everything. And then the fourth and final condition was the removal of all gravel within the right-of-way and replaced with turf, and then the existing driveways be repaired with that leftover material or additional material of comparable quality. And as we get to it, the existing gravel is within the right-of-way here, so this is where we're requiring the petitioner to pull that gravel back and use it to repair the existing drive, as well as do any other needs that are on the site.
Excellent, thank you. Technical questions? Let's go with Kathy and then Ed.
Can you go back to the actual photo of the building?
This one,
No, the next slide.
Sure.
That one. It says in here that the building does not need any major remodeling. I don't think that's much of a building. Are they going to do any painting or?
yes, I didn't state that in the staff report, I probably should have, but the petitioner has stated that he'll be painting the structure as well as doing some maintenance to the structure itself when it comes to painting the exterior facade. And again, he has agreed upon repairing the driveway as well as doing some weed control and the fence repair. So he will be doing some site repair to the site. But the building itself is structurally sound. It just needs some touch-ups aesthetically.
So the site will look better
Correct.
finished.
Correct. We'll be requiring a detailed landscaping plan that'll show some of those requirements
There's
for
no
landscaping.
gateway facility right now.
No, and that's part of the conditions on why we're requiring the landscaping and the beautification that he's already
And
committed
the
to.
gateway out. Makes you want to leave. Ed, and then Jeff, I think you had your hand.
My question was a little more like, this is kind of big picture and not totally related to this, but you look at these maps, the land use and the zoning maps and stuff like that, and obviously this is brought on by the DOT acquisition and reconfiguration of everything that's out there, but as part of doing our new zoning map and all that sort of stuff, do we do like a GIS update at any point after a project like this where things like this get cleaned up and the property lines get readjusted and everything gets sort of shown the way that it is currently from a zoning and ownership standpoint?
Well, the
Like to match up with
With
what's
the
there.
new, you mean with the new transportation, or with the new
Yeah, like
right-of-ways?
with the DOT right-of-ways and all that sort of stuff. I mean, just because you look at a map like that, and it gives you a really kind of an off idea of what's actually out
When
there.
you're looking at this, you mean? Something like that map is kind of confusing?
It's sort of the whole thing, and like the county zoning overlays with the city zoning, with the county or the town parcels versus the city parcels. It just gets a little, I guess this is professional hazard that I look at these a lot, but it's really kind of confusing. So I'm just curious as to how that all gets.
Well, there's a timeline when it comes to updating our GIS. We'd love it to update daily. Unfortunately, it just can't happen that way.
An army of like,
That's right.
programmers.
So
I have an army
when we
of
are
that.
looking at that, we are constantly getting updates from all the other municipalities, and they come in.
Gotcha.
When it comes to any large
I just wasn't sure
construction,
if
it just
part of
takes
doing the
time.
Works
zoning
itself
map-
out over, a little bit over time, but the zoning map is,
part of
yeah,
that
that's a,
might help out as part of that too. I just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Okay, just curious.
let's look into that. I'm not, I'm not positive, how quick it happens.
Can do
Darren
it.
will do it himself. Is that what?
Yeah.
The new zoning map will be parcel by parcel,
Right.
so they won't have, I mean, it'll clean it up, but you're still gonna have
Yeah.
so much overnight areas in and out.
It's well, yeah. No, and you're going to have that conflict on stuff like that. So
And those
I'm just
right,
curious.
I mean, those right-of-way, the way the right-of-ways have been redone out there, that really, when you start to look at a map, that really starts to
It
confuse
really throws
us.
it off.
And I don't, what's the better way? I don't know. We'll have
Well-
to sit down and see what is a better way of
Yeah, I
portraying
mean,
that.
Because I mean,
You're right.
the DOT plats are available. I mean, all their ownership plats are available. It's just a matter of
No, you're right. I mean, it doesn't look pretty on this map, and,
It's all current right now.
it just looks,
yeah,
just the way that with
You're
the
right.
different parcels and
yeah.
town, it just doesn't look clean like, we expect in the center city.
Maybe it's just the aesthetics that really
Hey.
bugs me. I don't know.
No,
That's hard to look at.
I agree. It is hard to look at. I agree.
Jeff, did you have a comment, question?
Yeah, I'm looking at this, and maybe I answer my own question. This is just a permit to permit the use as a conditional use.
Correct.
Yes.
So that's why you didn't address any signage issues? with regards to what he could do signage-wise in
Correct.
this, because it's already in the M3 zoning?
Correct. It's not like if it was coming under the auspices of a PD review where we're looking at the entire development, we'd look at that. The signage in this case is just, it's accessory to the use, and the use of that site is really what we're concerned with on this site. So that's why we didn't address it. If they're going to put a big flashing sign that was related potentially to their use, we might take a harder look at it, but
Yeah, but
they're
there's
not
nothing to
proposing.
prevent them from do that if it's permitted in the M3.
It's permitted in the M3 unless we determine that it has a material effect on the conditional use. So, I mean,
Is that, if he's going to do a signage, then does that come back through here?
not necessarily. Probably not. I mean, it's probably all, I mean, remember, we have our base sign package where you're allowed X amount of square
Right.
footage, X type. You get that right now going into it. I can't imagine a situation where they propose a sign that would conflict with that. Now, if they're coming, no, it's going to, whatever they do with respect to wanting to put up a sign, it has to meet our current zoning standards. If it doesn't meet our current zoning standards, then it'll have to go for a variance.
No, I understand that. M3 probably is a little bit more intrusive sign than,
No, it's the same, pretty much the sign package, the sign allowance is pretty much the same in manufacturing as is in commercial. The only difference that you start to get is when you're in a downtown area versus some of the Highway 41 corridor where you get 60 feet or 200 square foot digital sign, things like that. But if this was a PD, I think it would be an appropriate conversation to have, but it really doesn't affect, the sign itself doesn't affect why we're here. We're here because he's doing that conditional use permit for a towing operation.
no, and I get that, but on the same token, we're proposing him to put in certain landscape and things of that nature because this is a gateway corridor. I thought we would address signage issue too. If we're addressing landscaping, you would address signage for a gateway type
You already have,
location.
but you already have
And
guidelines.
that has to do with aesthetics. That's the only point I was trying to get to.
Yeah, I think the landscaping on Algoma is mainly because of the outdoor storage accessory
Good point.
used to the towing operation. If it were a conditional use for I don't know, we don't have one for that, but for, let's say, a restaurant, we wouldn't have that same condition. It's mainly because you have that big fence out there that leaves a blank wall because of the outdoor storage. So that's why when staff talked about adding landscaping to soften up that wall,
And
fence wall.
that's an excellent point, and thank you for coming up here. That is really, I mean, the landscaping is there because of that outdoor storage area that's related back to this. So we have an opportunity, like David said, to soften that up at this point. The signage, you know how I'm concerned about signs, so.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to get at. We don't address those kinds of things on a
Under,
consistent basis.
well,
On this particular thing,
have it.
yeah,
Have
I mean,
rules.
it's a hard one to say, okay, we're going to put landscaping requirements out there because of the conditional use. However, guess what? That's what it was before, and we didn't have that, and we have a big fence. I mean,
hold on, but
same thing.
there's a key distinction there. The landscaping we're proposing is because there's a storage area there that's going to have various vehicles in various states, and that's why we're proposing to soften up that.
Wasn't that the use before?
There was a use before, but we annexed that in, so it was a pre-existing non-conforming use.
All right.
It's lost that non-conformity. Hey, you know I like to look at signage, but in this particular case, if I felt we could push the signage issue, I would push that.
All right, other technical questions from the commission? Seeing none, is there anyone here from the audience to speak to this item today? Going once. Okay, public commentary is closed. Back to the commission for discussion and hopefully a vote. Kathy?
One more question. One of these sentences here, it says, "The tow truck will be off-site at night and will return during the workday." What is the tow truck doing at night? It is not parking on a city street.
Those are typically parked in somebody's driveway. I mean, tow truck drivers are on call, so remember a couple years ago, we changed the ordinance to allow, I think you're allowed to have a tow truck parked in your driveway. You can probably park it on the street, but I know you can park it on the driveway for X amount of time.
Oh, okay, so that's legal?
That's correct. We adjusted it. One commercial vehicle of a certain size. Couldn't be like, you see some of the, I think you see some of the big multi semi ones,
Right.
so those aren't allowed.
Other
Move to
comment?
approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Thomas?
Aye.
Vince?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye?
Weigert?
Aye.
Nolenberger?
Aye.
Bowen?
Aye.
Wojtek?
Aye.
Carried 7-0.
Let's move on to item number 4, planned development approval to establish a food concession and outdoor dining and recreation area at the northwest corner of Jackson Street and Pearl Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, this is a plan development request. As you had mentioned in the description, it's really for lack of a better term, I called it a food concession and outdoor dining and recreation area. It's almost a stationary mobile vending site. It wouldn't, well, let me first give you the location. You're on Jackson Street here, Jackson and Pearl, just south of High. This is just about a third of an acre site. It was a former site of a gas station. It was acquired and cleared by the Redevelopment Authority in 2007. It is a brownfield site right now. Well, here you can see the zoning is C3, so it's a downtown. It's a C3 plan development in this section, the primary part of this lot. To the west, you have St. Peter's Church parking lot and a couple vacant parcels here to the northwest. To the south, you have the parking lot associated with, I guess, the Pearl Avenue redevelopment area. There's not a building there yet, but there's the parking lot. And then across the street on Jackson to the east, you have a couple service businesses, automobile or motorcycle service, and a educational facility. The zoning, again, for this whole area is Central City C3. What's being proposed, basically, as I had mentioned, is a stationary mobile vending site. It would include a replica of a historic circus wagon used for food vending, outdoor dining area, some passive recreation area, as well as a very heavily landscape setting. So I'll just kind of go over the site plan that you see here. This is Jackson Street, and this is Pearl, so it's kind of turned to the side, fit better on the screen. But you'll see this would be a crushed granite, kind of a semicircular area that would be used for outdoor dining. You can see a mark on here for the cart. That would be the circus wagon, and I'll have a picture of that, the replica circus wagon that's a food vendor. Location, there'd be some crushed granite pathways, pedestrian walkways through the site, a non-permanent shed would be used for storage. Basically, a very heavily landscaped site, some lawn area. Within the pathway and on the site are some bench locations, and also these are sort of sitting stones or flat rocks that can be used to sit, to relax. The petitioner's business model is really to create, as he had put in his application, to create a relaxed natural setting as a backdrop for the pedestrian-oriented food service, which is very similar to a food truck dining. If you've ever read about that, it's getting a lot of national popularity, food truck dining and vending dining. We do have a mobile vending ordinance in the city. This is a little bit different because it's a stationary vendor. He'll be on the site, but it is a wheeled facility, food service facility. Hours of operation would be from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. Again, the petitioner has kind of described this as a sort of an urban oasis. Providing that park-like setting is really part of the business plan to create a unique sort of outdoor dining service, and he can describe that a little bit better. This is a picture of what the vending wagon looks like. There's no signage proposed for the site except for the signage that's on the wagon itself. So this is what would be sitting in that granite parking area, or not parking area, but sitting area, dining area. These are some examples of what the landscaping concept would be. It's kind of hard to tell from a sort of a landscape plan like this, but basically You'd have the rolling pathways, the bench seating, sort of the variety of plant materials. I guess the point to get across is that heavily landscaped site as the backdrop. The use itself is permitted in the C3 district as a food service. Parking is not required for a C3 business, and on this site, the petitioner is not proposing to use this area at all for parking. Basically, he would pull in the cart. Staff is recommending that the entryway be blocked during business hours so no vehicles can get in and get out, as it appears like it's sort of a driveway there. There is a curb cut. It is important also to note there's crushed granite stone and a lot of vegetation. As this site is a brownfield site, it's not usable for a bricks and mortar type development. You can't be turning up the soil. It's basically just kind of a unusable site at this point until it's cleaned. So this use is in staff's opinion, is a real great intermittent use for the site. The food truck concept and the outdoor dining vending concept is something that's relatively new to Oshkosh. It's very big in other markets. We feel from a staff level that it's unique. It's a nice dining choice for Oshkosh. It's a new concept. Now that the weather's getting a little bit nicer, can really kind of see the benefit of some of this outdoor dining. One thing we did feel that the site may be underutilized. You have quite a bit of area for the one cart, and we are going to be recommending that the planned development allow an additional 1 or 2 carts or food vending units to be on the site. However, we want to leave that at the applicant's or petitioner's discretion. He will be having a lease of the property with the redevelopment authority as they own the site. But because of the large investment that this one vendor is putting on the site, it would be at his discretion, and however he does the lease with the redevelopment authority to have more vendors on the site itself. But we want to allow that option out there. Typically, there's a lot of synergy between different types of vending units like that. You create a little more energy when you have multiple types. There's a reason why you have Burger King hops in right next to a McDonald's, right next to a Taco Bell, and they're all in the same area. They kind of draw more people to that area itself. Same concept here. Bulk standards as far as setbacks and everything goes, dimensional standards, everything is good with this site, with the one exception. This crushed granite entryway is a little bit, it's about 7 feet too wide. Our code would only allow what we would call a driveway, even though this is going to be used for vehicles, at 30 feet. So we are recommending that be cut back. Not the curb cut in the street per se, but the improvements on the site. So you'd get a little more landscaping here on the south side, or actually this is the east side of that outdoor dining area. Again, I'm going to mention that we are recommending this be blocked off during business hours from when he's on the site. And one other thing we're adding is a recommendation for a pedestrian access to Jackson Street. I know I've talked to the applicant, and that is his intent, just didn't make it on this plan. But obviously, I believe his business model is to capture quite a bit of Riverwalk traffic, downtown foot traffic, pedestrian movements, probably from the university, from the businesses in the area. So obviously you want as many connections as possible. So, but we are going to put that in the condition as well. To kind of sum it up, we are in support of this plan development and this concept. We feel that not only from a nice intermittent use for the site, being that it's only surface improvements, it's a great intermittent use, but it's also going to greatly improve the overall appearance of this section of downtown and the streetscape on Jackson, especially in an area right now that is just kind of a vacant, empty lot with kind of vegetation growing out of it. And we also feel that the use itself is unique and kind of new to Oshkosh. We think it's going to be something that should be tried here, and it'd be a nice addition to our downtown. So we are recommending approval of the plan development. We do have 6 conditions. I kind of went through them, but I'll go through them real quick here. To allow 2 additional mobile vending units on the site at the petitioner's discretion. Vending concession, wagon, refuse, dining furniture all be removed from the site or internally stored in that shed between 11 and 9 a.m. The entrance to the site from Pearl Avenue be reduced in width, no greater than 30 feet at the property line. Barriers be installed during business hours to block vehicle entrance to the proposed site as approved by Public Works. Pedestrian linkage be made to the vending area, to the public walk on Jackson, and the design of the proposed on-site shed be approved by the Department of Community Development. We don't know what that looks like yet. It is a shed, but there you go.
Excellent. Technical questions. Start with Jeff.
Yeah, I got 2 or 3 things I want to get cleared up. What ordinance will govern, since you said it's not a moving, we have a moving vending ordinance. Does that ordinance cover this particular application also?
Yes, and the petitioner does have a mobile vending license currently.
Okay. And then 2, this is a fairly busy intersection, and I understand why he wants to put there. Is there any particular safety concerns? Because I didn't hear about you talking about any kind of barriers in the landscaping that would prevent pedestrians that are going to be sitting outside eating and car traffic from that. We aren't putting a requirement that there's rocks or something along that Jackson Street or along Pearl Street to block, slow down a car from going in there, since it's outdoor type thing.
Well,
So I'm wondering, why did we think about or consider that at all?
Well, we considered it slightly. You do have the curb on Jackson Street, for one. There's also, there's going to have quite a bit of landscaping in here. He does have some stones at this open lawn area to kind of block that off. But frankly, it's there's sidewalk in between. It's a street.
Curb there, right? I mean,
There is a curb on the street.
Yeah, I think there's a curb there. I was
we
just
wouldn't
wondering
put-
if that's enough.
Well, I
Or
guess
if we
we felt it with the landscaping, the curbing, and the sidewalk separation, that it would function the same as any other type of site.
There's no
But usually-
entrance signage, there's no,
Right.
there's no appearance that you could actually get to it from Jackson. Now, from Pearl, yeah, I mean, there is a curb cut there, and that's how he's going to access a site, which is why we put the conditions in to have some type of barriers there that doesn't allow that type of movement. But the movement off of Jackson, unless you're jumping that curb and you've lost control of your car, I think that's the only way you're going on.
That's the only thing that
People already walk down the streets.
But,
Right.
I mean, it's not less likely, obviously, during the winter, because he's not typically be there during the winter, so.
Nope,
It
he
really-
wouldn't-
and it
he wouldn't
doesn't-
be there in the winter.
You just think about it over the course of our history. I haven't, thought of too many times where that's occurred in the downtown environment. I mean, 100 Block building got hit once a few years back ago.
Yeah, but I'm
Nothing else.
just thinking this is a different type of use than what we're used to.
Right.
So I'm trying to think a little bit outside the box as far as trying to protect pedestrians. And the third one, this is a brownfield. Do we know how far down that contamination is? If he's putting landscaping, he's going to be disturbing the dirt. There's no choice about that. So do we have any concerns as far as understanding what that brownfield is and what issues that may contain as far as those vapors coming up?
Well, it's a
go
capped
ahead.
site, so Darlene, any words? I mean, we went through our normal process. It's a capped site. He can't go in and put foundations or anything else like that in there, but
Right. The landscaping and the ground cover is considered just surface improvement, even though the root system obviously goes in. I'm not an engineer, but, that may actually help the site to have that type of cover on the top of it. The crushed gravel and everything obviously would just sit on top.
we'll make sure, we're going to make sure that anything we do doesn't disturb whatever agreements that we have with DNR on closure for the
Right.
site, so that's what.
And then, since this is a planned development and we can control signage,
Ken, correct?
what is the signage plans? Is it just what's on his
Just what's on the vehicle, yeah.
vehicle itself?
And I don't, I haven't heard.
Because I don't know what else you would,
The
on a
applicant.
building, there's not anything to control what signage you would put.
And the only thing that I've seen in other cities, and Mr. Fulbright can address that when he comes up here, is I've seen sandwich boards and things like that go on the ground that will show what the special is, things like that. And I wouldn't have a concern for a small sandwich board on the site. But again, the applicant's not proposing it, so unless he wants to propose it now, he's going to be limited to whatever's on that trailer.
Well, either that or we can actually put some kind of limitation to where you said,
One
I mean,
ordinance,
puts a,
one
sandwich-
ordinance, yeah, one
a sandwich
ordinance.
sign or something like that, or a sandwich sign per, like you said,
Per unit,
per unit.
sure.
type of thing. I'm fine with that, but nothing permanent, because obviously he's going
You
to
can't put it
great
in the
length with
ground
all
either.
No.
the
There's,
foliage.
yeah, there's no, like you're not putting, he's not putting up a pylon sign or anything like
Right.
that. And that pylon sign would be concerns for us, because then you'd be digging potentially into that environmental cap, so no. And he's not proposing it,
So
so.
is there anything that would prevent that from happening 2 years down the road?
Yeah, this body, what we're approving right now is what's moving forward. If you want to allow some sandwich board, put that on there. There won't be any type of pylon sign or ground sign.
Well,
What's
yeah,
being
I just want to
proposed now
make
is
that
no
clear,
signage.
Yep, nope.
that maybe we add that as a proposal to make that very clear, that, you know, that
No,
we would only allow these kinds of signs and
add that, certainly add that one sandwich board per unit potentially on there. One sandwich board,
do that after we come back, listen to it.
Bob, you had a comment?
Yeah, that site you said had been the gas station there, right?
Correct.
And when they took that station down, had the DNR come in and did they actually remedy this site?
remediate it
Yeah.
for the tank
Did
and
they
all
dig
that?
it out? Because there had to be tanks in the
Oh,
ground.
there's no doubt there's.
They had to come out.
Yeah,
So-
Darlene said the tanks were removed, so yeah, we did work with the DNR, and I think we got a SAG grant on that, which is a
So
site assessment.
what I'm getting at is if the contamination would more than likely be
Petroleum related, which is,
beneath or alongside the tanks
correct.
and be quite deep in the ground.
Usually it is, and that type of, the petroleum type of contamination is one of the easiest stuff to remediate, and it's probably one of the least noxious of, you're not getting into your oxides and your solvents and, all that stuff that gets in there.
Depending on
It's
what.
not horrible, I'm not saying it's
Yeah, I
great
mean,
to have.
if
wanna
there
eat
was a
it.
garage there,
Where's
it's
Borsig
probably
we need it?
chlorinated.
I don't believe there was a garage there. I think that was that,
No, it's just a service
that was just
station, yeah.
a filling station.
Yeah, it was just a filling station, the old Marathon and
I
whatever.
would say the ground that they're planting the landscaping in is probably going to be pretty good soil. That's just,
And they're not growing crops in it, so it's,
It's not in the proposal. Any other technical questions before we beat this
Veggies.
entirely to death? Okay, done with technical. Anybody here from the public to speak to this item today?
Aaron, would you like me to speak a little bit?
Please.
Yep.
Love to hear from you.
My name is Jeff Fulbright. I'm proposing this for the site.
Your address, please?
Pardon me?
Address? Your address?
Oh, 506 Jackson.
All right.
Dave did a very nice job of kind of capsulizing
Yes, he
the
did.
presentation written narrative was to the committee. But what I'd like to get across is we're going to do an iconic food, the hot dog. It does, right now, statistics show that there's over 2 billion pounds of hot dogs sold annually in the United States. That's 60 hot dogs per person. It's
Falling behind.
It's iconic.
I like hot dogs.
We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do upscale hot dogs, and that's why we call it Famous Frank's hot dogs, like hot cuisine, H-A-U-T-E. I'll explain that as we go along here, as I go along. Darren, should I just sort of like read the narrative?
Whatever you want to
Okay, I'm going to bore you to death with the narrative. It's only a couple of pages here, but it'll help explain a few of the things that we didn't get into.
I would just highlight what you think you need to get across, and then
Okay, well, essentially, yeah, we've discussed the location to an extent. Fundamentally, it's a different type of development than anybody else is doing on or adjacent to the Riverwalk. It is kind of a nasty little corner, and I'm not being denigrating, but it's difficult use because of, what is it, brownstone?
What was that?
What is that called?
Brownfield.
Brownfield. We are just doing surface improvements, so it's a real good match. We're going to be adding a lot of topsoil. We're going to be adding a lot of this crushed granite. The crushed granite is going to be between 4 and 6 inches deep throughout the entire area. Let me also pass around one of these. You can see some of the color of what's going on. You take your time. Of what this is going to look like. Ours is going to be a little bit more floral than that, but we want it to be a very natural-looking thing, not like something that your Aunt Rosie has in the backyard, but very what nature does, and a lot of the plants that we have we were working with the floral architect, we specified to give it a very natural look. And with the pathway that goes through there, we want to make it actual entertainment. I was in the restaurant business in Florida, and I learned from one of the most successful guys down in Florida that the first bite is taken with the eye. Now, not only is that done with food, but it's done with the presentation of your building. What Don Kate did, he was my mentor and good friend, he would build a beautiful restaurant, but then he had a full landscape crew for all of his restaurants. And he made an incredible jungle around all of his restaurants, and people would come just to take pictures of the restaurant. What I'm doing is taking a very inexpensive concept and just kind of going over the top with it, because it is a very successful and iconic concept. Wagon has been used around the country. I'm not the only guy that's ever done that. We use these down in Disney World, a lot of entertainment centers around the country. They're hugely attractive. And then the landscaping aspect I learned from Don. So I'm putting those two together here to see what can happen. This is our first attempt at that. And we actually, my partner is John Demmel, who owns the Glass Nickel Pizza in town. We see this as a potential for a franchise. But this is our hometown, and we want to try it here. We see that as a great site because it is adjacent to the Riverwalk development. We see it as something different. If it was another office building or just some other brick and mortar thing, it's not as interesting. So we think we can add a really dynamic, interesting aspect to that area, which can also create more interest for some of the open land there for development and possibly even increase land values. I don't want to give us too much credit, but I think it can help. And I want us to work together to make this happen. Anybody can put out a hot dog cart, and God bless everybody. A lot of people have done it, and it's a really cool thing to start your own business at whatever level. But we decided to do it upscale. You can buy a hot dog cart for as little as $1,500. We're spending about $26,000, $27,000 on this wagon, and we're also spending over $30,000 on the landscaping to work together. But it's still less expensive than a bricks and mortar restaurant, and our profits should allow us to maintain a good viable business there. So it's an experiment for us. It's an experiment for Oshkosh. I think it could work if we work together. And I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, this isn't where we stop. John and I believe this has potential for franchise for people of medium means to potentially have their own restaurant. Average restaurant today, bricks and mortar, unless you're leasing it, you build it, it's going to cost $1 million plus. You can do one of these if we set up the model, which we're going to work on. You can do one of these for under $100,000 and make almost the amount of profit you could make on a brick and mortar restaurant. So Oshkosh can be the home of something potentially very interesting regionally.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
There's a question for you. Jeff?
Yeah, did you envision having multiple food carts?
Oh, on the site?
Yeah.
That was kind of out of left field. The concept of clustering works. Like I said, I was in the restaurant business in Florida, and there's a restaurant every 50 feet. And people go to those areas where restaurants are. The only drawback here is those concepts are based on multi-block spatials. This is only 0.28 acres. And the landscaping is huge because we want people to be able to wander through the area and have these little seating areas. That circular area, if you see it on your maps, pretty much, thank you, pretty much only allows for, if we have to move this cart every day, we're going to have like a 10-foot truck with a 14 or 15-foot trailer having to come in there, swing in there, and then parallel park right where it is. If you have two other people that are involved, I don't know how you can parallel park those units. Another thing is we'd have to coordinate the exact time we all show up. Maybe there's a certain order to do that parking. Another thing is they'd have to agree to our hours of operations. And 3, that makes us landlords. So in the initial year, we're not warm to that in the initial year. But I do understand that clustering is a strong point. But if it doesn't work for us here, there's a property right across the street. It's the motorcycle shop, and they're already allowing, a gentleman does a pulled pork on that right across the street. So you could still have an area where you have these sort of mobile foods if it doesn't work for us. And our attraction can attract for them also. I don't mind that. I'd like other people to be successful as a result of us. But if it makes it problematic for us to function, which I'm not sure of it, it was just suggested to us within the last 30 days.
Right.
But in the first year, it could not happen because Murphy's Law and working out the bugs, so that would still be down the road anyways.
Question from Bob.
Yeah, the trucks have to be connected to the wagon all the time?
No,
So they could be moved off a site?
yeah. But did you ever try to parallel park semis? That's essentially what it is. It's almost as big as semis. If you get like units, because if we want to be where we are, which is the best place for our car to sit, then somebody has to go to either the east or the west. Now, if you park to the east, there's a good chance you're going to be blocking the pathway on the east side. If you park to the west, the same thing will happen. And that's all part of the entertainment of what we're trying to do is to have people get a bite to eat, walk through this beautiful garden, and then if they want to sit down on one of these stones or one of the benches that would be along the pathway, they could do it. So, like I said, I'm not trying to be a Scrooge about this, but I see problems. It's a good idea, clustering, but it just might not work here. If it makes it better for us, I'm all for it, but I'm seeing these problems.
And one thing you'll notice in the condition is we did put it at the petitioner's discretion. So if
Yeah.
Ed decides to change his business model, if it works for him later, we don't want to discourage his, or
Right.
not allow his ability to do it, but it'd be up to them.
And like I said, if the city would like to see more of this in that area, the guy across the street, he's got this little motorcycle shop with a lot of parking there, a lot of space, and he's already letting this one guy use it. Maybe we could encourage that to have someone else there, and you'd have the same effect, but they wouldn't have the benefit of our little parkway, but people don't care if people came across. So,
Okay, other questions for the petitioner as long as he's, thank you much. Oh, go ahead, Kathy.
Landscaping looks beautiful. I mean, the pictures look like the Payne Arts Center.
yeah, that's exactly one of the things we kind of looked at. Right.
Mobile's in the right of way.
But planting them is one thing, maintenance is something else. Because I own a garden.
It will be hired.
Okay.
Yep. That's part of our deal with,
It can be really nice, but if it isn't maintained,
turns into a mess. I've seen.
and no, I think it's a great concept. It sounds like fun. If you can make the landscaping work like that, power to you.
Yeah.
My other minor concern is the shed. It could be really bad, or it could be reasonably nice looking. It's non-permanent, and it says the condition is that the design will be approved by community
This is
development.
essentially it, because we're spending, we've got a limited budget. That's it. It's 8 by 10. It's just a nice, neat backyard shed. It'll be tucked behind the wagon, so it won't be in the forefront. But we have to have a shed for non-organic uses, like dry goods. We have
You're
to.
going to put your picnic tables in there, or?
We're going to have small tables, we won't have picnic tables unless
Oh, okay.
we bolt them to the ground somehow. But anyways, in that circular seating area in front, there'll be small tables, cafe-ish, with seating, going to be stacked, and then that would go in the shed also in addition, dry goods and that sort. But nothing, no food, no organic stuff like that.
Okay.
All right, anything else? Thank you very much, sir. I wish you the best of luck.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else here to speak to this item today? Come on up, ma'am.
I'm Mary Merkin with Merkin Properties, 1729 Knapp Street. My questions, well, I think it's a great idea. I think it looks fabulous, and it would be exciting to have in Oshkosh. My concerns are with the parking situation for where people are going to park when they're going to stop and have lunch or dinner, whatever, and what kind of agreements have been made or are in place with adjoining property owners about that. That was one concern. The other concern I have is our building is across the street from there, and trash removal. I haven't heard anything about how trash is going to be taken care of there. And then a third comment, I can tell you from personal history, on Jackson Street, be careful with the landscaping because you will have a stretch of salt kill from the snowplows in the winter, so if your landscaper hasn't been aware of that. But those are just the concerns that I had. It is a busy intersection. With increased pedestrian traffic, there is a concern there for safety. And then, again, just where are all the people going to park would be my concern. And that's really all I wanted. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Okay, seeing none, back to the commission. Do we have answers for the woman's question? Carl?
I was going to ask the same question. I really like the concept.
Yeah, I
I
do
think it's
too.
really unique and kind of attractive, but I was worried about the parking. I thought, wow, is there enough parking there in Pearl, or where is it going to be that people will be able to park?
Well, one thing that I just passed out, it'll kind of go around. This is Jeff put together an on-street parking map showing where on-street parking is. So any street that you see is clear, north side of High Avenue, other sections of High, Riverway Drive is open parking all the time, obviously not at night. And then you can see the time limits, the 2-hour time limit, the 1-hour time limit in other locations. The red, which is the majority of the areas down here, is no parking. So there is some on-street parking, not massive amounts of it. There is some available, not directly adjacent, but pretty close on Riverway. I did speak with the petitioner earlier about this, and I don't know, Jeff, if you've had a chance to talk to any of the neighboring property owners, the church possibly, to see if you can arrange, that would, logically, it's right next door, that would be the perfect spot for it, to get some type of a parking agreement. He may be still in process of doing that, but I guess when it broke down to staff reviewing it, it's a C3 zone, doesn't require parking, it could be a, 4,000 square foot restaurant, and wouldn't require a single parking stall. So in that same respect, we didn't necessarily impose it on.
And remember, the model here is not really to capture that street traffic, so it's to get that pedestrian. You got a huge, the city center with 2,000 jobs in that. You've got the city and county facilities. You've got a lot of people walking down this area. So I think his model is trying, and all of these similar type of uses try and rely on that walk-up traffic. People aren't going here to just. It's a destination related from whatever's happening in the local area. So I think that's another thing that we're comfortable with as well.
Looking at this parking map, it's hard to tell, is Pearl Avenue no parking, or is it 4-hour, or what is it?
It's no parking.
Okay, because it's hard to tell by color on this thing.
It's supposed to be red, so that shows no parking.
There's not a lot, you're not going to sit.
Okay.
You're not going to park in front of this use anywhere. You're going to park. I mean, the only real proximate public parking is down Riverway Drive there. That's about it.
Yeah, well, and on High.
But again, if you look at this map, you see what he's looking at capturing, the city center and all the rest.
Here.
Guys, can you keep it down?
Hey, Jeff?
Can you keep it down in the back, please? Please keep it down till we're done. That's good.
Yeah, but as Darren had said, if you look at the uses, just the concentration of office uses and then the campus proximity as well, there's quite a bit of pedestrian movement.
Now, the other thing that we have not talked about, and I'm glad she did bring that up, is the whole trash removal. We hadn't thought about it.
Yeah, trash was, it's in his application. It would be removed from site. The receptacles and the trash itself would be removed from site every evening outside of business hours. Now, the trash cans might go in the shed, I suppose, but
Small receptacles will go in, like everything that goes in at the end of the night will go into the shed. And then we take the wagon to the base site, which would be John's Restaurant at Glass Nickel, where the major trash dump area is. And so it would be.
So trash will be removed nightly then? Okay.
Correct.
Other comments and questions? I think given this is a brownfield site, it's kind of a tough location. It's not very big. I think this is a really interesting approach, and I think it's quite creative.
Yes, it is.
And I'm very impressed with the landscaping, because that's going to make a big difference there. Carl?
I'll move approval with those conditions that are listed on the page 3 of the
Second.
item.
It'd be
No, that require additional. There, yeah, we can modify later. Jeff had a.
Okay, there's been a motion, and is there a second?
That was it.
Moved and seconded, discussion, Jeff?
Yeah. Carl and Robert, I wonder if you would consider amending your motion to include the signage issue that we talked about, that there's no permanent sign
yeah.
to be put there, and that we allow one sandwich sign per unit, if there's multiple units.
I had that written
Do you
down.
need that in the motion, or is that already a given without approval? They couldn't do that.
Nope, you'd have to amend the motion and add it. What I had wrote down, I don't know if this sounds good, Jeff, I put signage limited to on-unit signage only and one sandwich board per unit.
That's fair.
That's
That's
acceptable
fine,
amendment to
yeah.
me.
Okay. Friendly amendment, and you accept that? It's been moved and seconded, and then there's been one friendly amendment. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, then call the roll.
Holmes?
Aye.
Hens?
Aye.
Crop?
Aye?
Weigert?
Aye.
Nolenberger?
Aye.
Bowen?
Aye.
Whitehead?
Aye.
Carried 7-0.
Excellent. On to item 5, public hearing, 2014 Community Development Block Grant Program Action Plan. Oh,
You too.
Which one do I press? Yes, it does. Okay.
Okay, this is what this is. I'll just do a brief. This is a brief. This is what we do annually. It's a brief presentation of our annual block grant program. So what Darlene's going to lay out is kind of we're proposing to fund activities under the block grant. As you know, we've been getting it since 1976. It's consistently going down each year, so each year we get a little bit less. So we get a little bit, even though they're flexible use of funds, as the amounts go down, we actually fund less activities. So we spend the majority of our funds on housing-related activities, some slum and blight removal in the center city, and then some admin and planning. And Darlene will go over that right now.
all right.
Okay. Okay, as Darren indicated, we have been entitlement community since 1976, and our programs and projects must meet one of the 3 national objectives of benefiting low to moderate income people, aid in prevention of slum and blight, or an urgent need. For 2014, our allocation is $735,085, and the city works in 4 broad categories: Central City, housing, public services, and administration. Why didn't it move? There we go. Our Central City allocation, we're looking at $100,000. We use that for acquisition and demolition of slum and blight properties in the Middle Village area, Central City areas. We have purchased some property from the county for back taxes, again in Central City or scattered site areas, as long as we're looking at slum and blight elimination. This is one of the 2013 projects that we did on Jefferson Street. 2 properties that we also acquired in 2013. Right now, we don't have any projects for 2014, but as projects and properties become available, that's what we'd be looking at.
Yeah, typically under this category, we're looking at some of the worst of the worst that are, driving down some of the neighborhood conditions. So, we'll use this technically to get rid of some of that scattered slum and blight in the neighborhoods. And sometimes if we've identified an area for redevelopment, we'll do some of that parcel acquisition to try and create redevelopment.
Our housing rehabilitation program, we're looking at owner-occupied rehab program of $390,000. We usually do between 15 and 20 projects every year. We receive over 60 applications every year, so there's always a need for improving properties in the city. We do a lot of exterior, interior, bringing the property up to code as much as we can. These are a couple of projects that we have done this past year.
One thing with this funds, while the funds are available citywide, and we do scatter it around, we also do try to target some of those neighborhoods where we have priorities, so we'll do special mailings into those neighborhoods, things like that, to try and get more interest in like a Middle Village or those other priority areas. We don't always get takers, and we can't reserve those funds because we have to spend them, or else the HUD can recapture them, so we also have to spend them. So our first priority, we like to concentrate it, but we go citywide typically.
This was a property we did on Knapp Street this past year. A couple more on Central and 11th. It's a major improvement and helps with the neighborhood. Then we also have a rental rehab program. One of the projects we did in 13 was on Hudson Street. And a project we're looking at for 14 is 667 Bowen. And we will be starting to work on that. It just hasn't been finalized yet until we have our funding. The city also has a public service consortium. We have collaborative effort with the United Way, Community Foundation, Winnebago County, and the city. We did this several years ago to try and eliminate the constant overlapping of services between all the public service agencies. So we can spend up to 15% of our allocation on public service activities. And then we have administration and planning. Again, a 20% maximum off from the allocation. We use it for salaries and training of staff. And also we do an allocation to the Fair Housing Center of Northeast Wisconsin to assist with housing enforcement, fair housing training within the city. We're looking for the Plan Commission to approve the 2014 funding allocation and that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan and other approved plans of the city. And then we'll take it to the Common Council for final approval.
Is this a public hearing?
Yes.
We'll have to open it up for a public hearing.
Great. Technical questions? Jeff?
Since I've been on this committee, this thing's probably cut in half of what we used to get, but our admin seems to be continue to be the same, and we're still trying to allocate to the same four categories, which seems difficult to put the resource, a resource, the resources where it's doing the most value. I guess what I was diplomatically trying to say. Have we taken into consideration, as this fund continues to dwindle, whether we should be spending this money like on item number 2 rather than number 1, or try to spread it around where you're not really getting the big bang for your buck for the amount of work that has to be done. Like you said, you have 60 applicants. There's no way with 400,000 you're going to satisfy 60 applicants in a year.
Right.
And we could possibly do that with 600,000 or whatever if we don't spend it. Have we given some thought? I'm not saying that this isn't consistent with a comprehensive plan. I'm just saying we got dwindling resources but we're still trying to do the same thing we did when we had $1.5 million. And it doesn't make sense to me.
Well,
Now, that's not our particular call, and I get it. It's asking the question.
I mean, I think you're right. I mean, we could put all our eggs in the housing neighborhood development basket if we want to. That would reduce the opportunity that we have. I mean, we put up to 70% has to go to benefit low to moderate income. The most bang for our buck we get on that is doing housing rehab of low to moderate income families. So,
Or removing properties that
or
addition through subtraction.
Correct, and that's where that 100,000 in item number 1 comes in. We don't really have a lot of other categories where we can go out and do opportunity-based, get rid of some of these real.
No, and I get that, but like I said, I mean, using the more amount of money to really hit home on the low, moderate income, knowing, the housing stock we have and knowing the programs we're trying to put in place with neighborhood works and those kinds of things, it makes more sense to me to have X amount of dollars allocated to that particular project, rather than trying to spread it and be everything to everyone, and we're only giving a little bit of resource to any of them.
No,
Same thing with, like a first home buyer. That satisfies one person instead of maybe 10 people that you can use the same amount of money for. It would have been different if we still had the $1.5 million. Okay, I mean, I get you, but we're not, and that's dwindling.
Right.
Seems like every year.
But I will. Let me just add to that quickly. We are also identifying other funds to get at some of those housing rehab. The whole, what we're doing with Healthy Neighborhood Initiative, with using those TIF funds to get at some of that home ownership and some of that rehab. So, that's a tune of about $700,000 that we got right now lined up to go into programming. And we're constantly looking at other grant programs. There's a federal home loan bank program, grant program that we're trying to identify. So we're always trying to identify other sources, but with this particular one, I mean, we always like to have a little bit, going towards that public services, because if we take this money out of public services, then you're potentially losing some of that programming. So we think it's important to continue to fund that as much as, it used to be, I remember when I was up at 200,000 at one time. You're right, but it keeps going, it's going in the wrong direction. At some point, we're going to have to examine whether we should be funding it at all. I think we have to take a hard look in the next couple of years. We're going to be developing a consolidated plan, so maybe when we do our consolidated plan, which kind of lays out how we're spending the money, that's maybe a good time to have that discussion. I still think, even though it's a pittance, $100,000 is a pittance, I still think it's an opportunity to get rid of some of those real horrible properties that we have sitting in neighborhoods, because there's nothing that helps drive down a neighborhood value than having that blighted house. And increasingly, it's harder and harder for us to order structures down, and they get tied up in court, so we like to deal with arm's length transactions. So we don't have a lot of money to do that unless it's in a TIF district. So, yeah, does it take away from some of those rehab opportunities? It does, but we're trying to identify other sources to make up for some of that loss. So it's a balancing act, Jeff. You're right.
Carl.
What I was going to say is essentially the same thing Darren just said, only more succinctly. I think we need all these various priorities.
Succinctly, I'm usually very succinct.
It took 4 seconds.
You did very good.
Other thoughts from the commission before we turn it over to non-existent public? Okay, this is public commentary is open. If anybody has anything to say. Okay, public commentary is closed. Do you need anything else from us? Do you need us to vote on this?
Yes.
To kind of voice.
That is consistent with the comprehensive plan and any other adopted.
All right.
I move approval.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Tomes.
Aye.
Hintz.
Aye.
Kraft.
Aye?
Weigert.
Hey,
Berger.
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried, 6-0.
All right. We're done.
5-0.
Done?
Oh, I'm sorry.
motion to adjourn.
No, 6-0.
Yours? No, it's
6-0.
Oh, you lost that.
It's been moved. Second. And seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're done.
Thank you very much.